Hi there, everyone. This is Amy. I just wanted to make an announcement so that those out there who might be interested are aware of a retreat that I'm so excited about. I am joined by Doctors Laura McIsaac and Rachel Mash, two wonderful, wonderful colleagues, GYNs of their own training, who are going to help me teach women about the art of pausing, specifically midlife health and pleasure. This is taking place on June 28th to the 30th, and it's happening at Isabella Rossellini's farm called Mama Farm out in Long Island. So please, please consider joining us. There's going to be massage offered and free time and meditation and breath work. Some acupuncture is going to be offered. So there's all this delicious opportunity to take care of yourself and nourish yourself, as well as learn about the perimenopause and menopause from three gynecologists who all feel really strongly about teaching and empathically, graciously offering all that we know. So please, if you're interested, email info@mamafarm.us. So info@mamafarm.us to reserve a spot and to learn more about it. Please, we'd love to see you there. Welcome to Gyno Curious and Vulva Views with Amy and Allison. Hey, listen, if you like what you hear today, please give us your feedback and comments. Follow us, subscribe, give us 5 stars on whatever podcast app you're on. Please, we'd love to hear from you, either at comments@radiofreerhinecliff.org or gynocurious@gmail.com, or phone us at 845-307-7446. Hey, Allison, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good.
Excited to be here with you as always.
I'm so glad to have you and be with you as well. So, today we're going to kind of extend our conversation from our last Vulva Views conversation.
All right.
Where we talked about packing for trips and journeys and the changes that us women have to make to our wardrobe to accommodate social norms and cultural expectations that are often about the male gaze, and the assumption and accusations that women's bodies are provocative and thus need to be covered. So, you and I were talking, one day over tea, and we were realizing that the word tight is a descriptive that is just often applied to the ways in which we want to see our bodies or how the world around us feel we should look. So, hey, Allison.
Look and feel.
Indeed. That double chin of mine, I want it to be tighter. Oh, the clothes she's wearing are skin tight. Or the patient who says after having a baby, my vagina's loose and my urogynecologist suggested I get my vagina tightened.
Oh, yeah. I went right to vagina being tight in my head.
Yeah. So I don't know. Tight seems to be a word that's applied to a lot of issues around our body. And I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence.
Tight butt.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. So we're just going to talk about tight and tightening, and the concept that we are perhaps looking for an ideal that is not really serving us women. So I went to Urban Dictionary because I thought it would be interesting to see what tight means according to them. And, we know what Webster says about tight, but let's see what Urban Dictionary says about it.
Urban is a lot of fun.
There it is. So it's a female who is the opposite
it started
of
with
a
female?
loose woman. They are tight, as they have had little or no sex. They're also tight as they are hard to get into bed. And another definition is that tight is slang for a virginal vagina.
Oh, my gosh.
So this is not just in our heads. There are others out there.
I had not taken the time to do that, so thank you.
I just,
I did not look it up. I just went into like the spiral in my own head of what that must mean to most people, or how people have said it to me in the past, or I've heard other people saying about it. Always females.
It seems to be, I mean, I think buff is the word that they use for male, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
but
of the corollary.
Also, when you say that, I tried. I immediately tried to because make the association with the male genitalia, and I don't like buff balls. No.
I was thinking more biceps and triceps and abs.
But like I said, I went right to the vagina when you said tight, and
Yeah.
that Urban Dictionary definition sure as hell did too. Which, back to the balls, I find it ironic that they're so focused on us being tight, because I rarely, like, let's just say men should not bend over naked. In my
Boy,
opinion.
did I just get
But there's nothing tight about those things unless you like throw them in freezing water. And
It's true. It's true. How come they can be laxed and soft
Yeah.
and, flaccid and it's okay? And alrighty, we're going to shift just a little bit from that imagery. I liked that imagery.
Welcome to the show.
There was-
I'm sorry for the trauma.
Oh, no. I love it. I love it. So, being kind of a historian, if you will, I decided I was going to investigate how long have we been tightening our bodies and the expectations that we adjust our bodies to meet personal and societal expectations. So, Allison, did you know that the earliest known representation of a possible corset appeared on a figurine from Minoan art from circa 1600 BCE?
I did know that they dated back that far. I'll tell you why. This is a kind of a funny and a fun fact. I worked as an actress's stand-in on the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, and I had to wear corsets for the whole thing.
Ooh.
This was many, many years ago in my other lifetime of acting and modeling and performing. And so the person that brought the corsets in educated us on the corsets. It's like a torture device. And here's why I'm mentioning this. The woman next to me passed out after they put it on her.
Oh, you bet. You bet.
Passed out.
For centuries, women were wearing this device, the corset, and it's described as a tight, they use the word tight.
Of course they did.
Elongated bodice worn beneath clothing and introduced in France in about the 1500s. And the ladies of the French court regarded the corset as essential to the female figure's attractiveness and to create the idealized female form. So, the corset is not just a status symbol because if one is so constrained, you can't possibly have physical mobility, which means you can have servants.
Either.
That's right. So corsets created skin irritations. It changed the way women could breathe, thereby that fainting episode that you described.
Yep.
It causes digestive changes because the bowel is all
And
compressed.
They break ribs.
They actually impact organs.
I know.
So this is not just about slimming the body. It is about impacting negatively on a woman's anatomy.
Also, and you said the idealistic shape of the woman, but who said what was idealistic at the time is the question. I'm
That's
sure
right.
it wasn't the woman being tied up in the corset.
I have no doubt that it was about societal expectations of women of a certain class. Again, if you are so constrained you can't move your fucking body, and that means you must have servants. What a bizarre, perverse
Interesting, 'cause
way.
I just realized perhaps it was another way of suppressing. Like,
Oh.
you sit there and stay still.
Absolutely. It's it absolutely impacts how you can move, breathe,
right.
run.
And you know what, though? Corsets recently came back and became
Yeah,
more
yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. They're called waist trainers now.
Oh, what a euphemism.
Train?
Yeah.
Let's train your waist.
That'd be 22
What
inches.
a waist.
Indeed. No, and there are companies, Skims, Spanx,
Yeah.
all kinds of body shape wear. Again, a euphemism for tucking and plucking and making sure that we have a form that fits a certain way of looking at the female body in today's world versus whatever those other time
Not just
frames.
the female body, but the female face. All of these lasers for tightening the neck, for tightening the face. And yet, I mean, I know that there are men out there or people that identify as men, non-binary, who they're all doing it. But every time I see an advertisement for them, it is a female's jawline and a female's neck. And it always has some sort of catch line or phrase like, feel young again, or look young again, or avoid the facelift, as if there are no other options. Like, hey, you can avoid the facelift with the laser, or you can age.
Age. Oh, what a nasty thought. Yeah, we really have gotten into a world, I think particularly with social media, where any sagging, any sign of wrinkles, any sign of aging is just felt to be unattractive or unsexy, or why would she possibly let herself go there? There are so many ways in which she could prevent that.
It is. It's very interesting. And I'm continuing to think of the different areas of the body that I've seen advertisements for making it tighter on women, but I don't see it for men. Like they call it the bingo wings, the sagging arms. Like, have you ever seen a male demonstrating the bingo wing? And they have them, or they have these big guts, but everything is pushed towards the female.
Someone once told me this great story, and I have no idea of the veracity of this story. So so listeners,
With
this
a grain
may
of
be
salt.
just a story for illustrative purposes, but who knows? So somebody said they were at a Bette Midler concert.
Oh, I love
and
Bette
Bette
Midler.
was, just had the greatest of audience. You can just imagine.
The divine Miss M.
Indeed. And she had her arms out and she was singing and she was carrying on. And she had this huge orchestra behind us. I think it was in Vegas. And all of a sudden, she stopped singing. And you hear the orchestra kind of petering out one instrument at a time. So, like, this was clearly not orchestrated. This was not planned. And the person who told me the story, who was in the audience, says that everybody just was, murmuring, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's happening with Bette? Is something wrong? Until there was this just kind of utter silence and thousands of people watching her. And as she has her outstretched arm, she goes and wiggles the skin underneath her upper arm and says, "Who invited you here?"
Oh, she's so funny.
And, it just, whether it's true or not, I just love that story.
That's a great story.
Because, here's a woman, just a reminder, is probably got, plenty of means to tighten and tuck all kinds of places in her body if she chose. But even the divine Miss M, is going to age, and that there's a certain amount of movement of the skin, the muscles, etc., that just happens to all of us.
Yeah, and may I share a story of an experience that I had after childbirth?
Please,
Because this was my first childbirth was like a miracle, no drugs, laboring in water, came out, just very not easy. I mean, I was like growling like a lioness trying to get her out, but my second pregnancy was so difficult and the delivery was so tough that my daughter almost came out sideways and I had to have surgery after the fact. Surgery primarily because my bladder had been shifted and like urinating was challenging. But when I went in for the surgery, and this is a very extensive thing where they cut the muscle and they reconstruct the muscles of the vagina so it holds the bladder up, my husband told me that while I was in recovery, still unconscious, the doctor walked out and said, her bladder's back in place and now she's 2 fingers tight.
Can
you believe that?
Unfortunately, I believe it.
My producer, Matty Rosenberg, is shaking his head like, yeah, I can totally believe that.
Yeah. The how shall I say this diplomatically, or maybe I just don't need to be. There are male gynecologists out there who are such misogynists and
oh my
who
gosh,
just unfortunately have so much power over their female patients, and they make this kind of comments, and I just want to I shake my head, and I really want to throw them out of the business because it's obscene. That kind of comment is so obscene.
Oh, and to top it off, he then grabbed a bottle of champagne from one of his nurses and left and said, "It's my birthday. I'm going out." I'm laughing at the discomfort, and again, I was drugged up. If I had heard him say that, I would have had many things to say and throw as well. But I could not believe it.
It reminds me when I was in training and the reproductive endocrinologist guys, who were two very machismo men, used to walk around and say, "Oh yes, I got her pregnant. I got her pregnant. I got her pregnant."
What?
As if their semen, which maybe it was, their semen got all those women pregnant, as opposed to the very rigorous, laborious,
my gosh.
challenging IVF experiences that so many of these women had gone through.
Okay.
So, I just, it's disgusting.
That's for another show.
Yeah. So, women do get around 92% of the cosmetic surgery procedures. So
I know
just,
that. Yes.
FYI, it's not just an impression. So there are men or male-identified folks out there getting them, but not so much. And if the number one reason that women are seeking plastic surgery is to boost self-confidence, then we really have to ask ourselves, where do we get our confidence? And how much does the, if you will, the so-called male gaze impact how we see ourselves and how we judge each other?
Well, but that's what I was going to say. I know that a lot of this perpetuated from the male gaze as well as the male control over a lot of society and business, but women are harsher than ever to other women.
Oh my gosh,
And
absolutely.
I had spoken about this before on another show that we did. I can't quite remember which one, but I find that the men, at least the men that I surround myself with, they find aging women to still be attractive. It's the other women that are harsh with other women. I mean, I even went out to dinner with a few friends recently that I adore, and I scratched my head between my eyes very, very gently and briefly. And one of them said "Oh, look at that little line. Have you tried filler for that?" And I thought, I like my little line.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me look different. It makes me look like myself. The pressure is coming from all angles.
Absolutely. The female gaze, the corollary to the male gaze is supposed to be more empathic and, rather than objectified, to show emotion and intimacy. It's all supposed to be so positive. But, there was an article in the Times today that really struck me. It was a woman who is a plus size influencer. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say her name incorrectly. She's a model, Dronme Davis.
Uh-huh.
She's a very famous, very well followed influencer. And she's getting all this negative feedback because she's losing weight.
Oh.
And that her followers, in their 100,000s, are giving her all this negative feedback around how dare you're no longer body positive, and she's just trying to celebrate her own process. And it's a very complex, very complicated issue because we do want to be positive around all body shapes. We also want to promote health. And, we do know that obesity, for example, is related to a lot of major medical concerns. But there are also a lot of people out there who carry some extra weight who are also extremely fit and healthy. So there's this wide range. But how much do we, particularly on social media, are we projecting our own stuff onto the influencer and vice versa? And what do we do with all of that? Because should any of us be judging the tightening phenomenon? If somebody wants to be tight, okay, they should be tight. If they don't want to be tight, then they can be not tight.
I mean,
right?
that's easier said than done.
Of course.
Particularly with what you're saying, with the online phenomenon. And sadly, no matter how hard we try to deny it, even if you are not participating in Instagram or TikTok or some of these other venues, somebody else is, and they're talking about it, and they're showing you, and they're sharing it. I mean, I see it with my kids. Like my 12-year-old, she comes home asking me about a video that a friend was talking about and wants all this skincare. And she uses this frozen roller because she's like, I heard it keeps your neck and your jawline tight. And I'm like, you're 12. You're 12.
Gosh,
What's
yeah.
happening in the world?
Yeah, and speaking of plastic surgery, there are more and more, 20 and 30-somethings that are starting it now because they've been convinced that if they start young, then there'll be less to do later.
The
and
Botox in the 20-somethings is much more popular and I think just devastating because there is going to be a long-term result that has not been seen in research yet.
That's right.
And these poor kids who are falling under the spell of all of these advertisements and these trends not thinking about what is going to happen 50 to 60 years from now. But, that is very typical of that, of that group. I don't want to call it pharma, but the aesthetics of the medical world. They want to target people who will spend the money, who will do it. And
that's right.
I always say, don't get me wrong. If you see me one day and my face looks like a fish, or you don't even need to ask. The answer is maybe I got a neck lift or something one day. So I'm not anti-plastic surgery or any of these things, but there is a time and a place and an age and also a very long thought out rational decision-making process that should go into it before committing to something like that. Because once they chop some of you off, I mean, have you seen some of these surgeries gone wrong?
Oh,
it is devastating.
Terrible.
Or people going to other countries for cheaper cosmetic surgery procedures and dying on the table.
Yep.
I mean, this is something that, it's not... Luckily, we can get our tattoos removed these days. But if you go and you get a butt implant or, I don't know, a giant tummy tuck that causes an infection in your abdomen, I mean, this is serious surgery.
That's right. As a surgeon, I'm always reluctant personally to have any kind of elective surgery. But I will also say, I used to say, never, ever, ever would I, have plastic surgery. As I'm 62 and that double chin I alluded to earlier, forms and grows. And particularly, I don't know, I know it's true that during COVID, when we all were Zooming and we were seeing ourselves on these videos and this awful perspective, plastic surgery went up, the number of users, because they were seeing themselves in this whole new mirror, if you will.
Well, it's when you kind of open your phone and you accidentally open the camera and you get that angle.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, I look like an addict or whatever, I look like I'm definitely struggling with something from this angle, and like the neck is all crinkled up like an accordion.
I just realized there's a benefit to being so short.
Oh.
That very few people see me from the underside. They're all looking at me from
it's funny. That's a very interesting point, because I have had, my daughter once was like, what's wrong with your neck? And I'm like, what do you mean what's wrong with my neck? I'm washing dishes. She's like, why does your neck go like this when you wash it? And she like crunched her neck up. I was like, get in your room.
Oh, you gotta laugh about this stuff. You gotta laugh about this stuff.
Oh, you know what? I just thought of something else. Skin tightening. A girlfriend of mine recently called me and was like, I cannot take it. I have cellulite. I'm mortified. I was like, you know what? I'm so fucking tired of the cellulite stress for women that men don't have that I'm going to start calling it constellations. I do not have cellulite. I have constellations. I am at one with the stars and the universe. That's what it is.
I like it. I really like it. Again, that there are just certain changes that occur in our body with each wonderful, blessed year. I want to remind everyone out there, we all die. And if we have the benefit, the privilege, the blessing, if you will, of living many, many years, this stuff happens. And, it's like, I love talking about scars in the same way, that these are storylines that they are,
you hear me? I might sound like
they're just that these changes in our body, and they're not easy. Trust me, they're not easy.
Imagine going to your grandmother's funeral and she's in the casket and she's got like major like breast implants and a pulled back face. I'm just imagining like what the future of funerals is going to be like.
Well,
and when someone's cremated, they have to take all that stuff out.
I know. This is why natural burials are going to become more popular, perhaps, because nobody's going to question what fillers are going into the earth. Oh my gosh.
Here lies Jane and her breast implants.
Oh my gosh.
Again, I'm not against anything
at
all.
No,
I'm just thinking about how, when it's too severe, what happens. But it's so much, even like sitting here while we're talking about tight, I'm thinking, well, what can I discuss? And I become self-conscious suddenly, like, oh, are the bags under my eyes swollen right now? Who cares? I'm tired. I've been up since 5:30. Like they should be swollen and puffy and maybe a little saggy. But it's just, even I have that societal influence to
Well,
look a
we've got
certain
a
way.
lot of internalized misogyny. I mean, we have to speak to it.
Very
that
true.
even those of us who are, proud to be feminists and proud to be enlightened and proud to be thinking about all these things and, messing it up sometimes. But we have been raised in a world that is so suffused with this attitude towards women, a negative attitude towards women, where every bit of media is showing, the princess shape, and that there's just, only more recently are we looking at a diversity of color in media, a diversity of bodies in media, a diversity of educational backgrounds in media, that it's been so talk about tight, the narrow, myopic view of how women need to look and be and act is just, it's exhausting.
It's a shanda.
Yeah.
When you mentioned princesses, and I thought of all the dolls that my kids bring home, and my kids are biracial. They're not, but they have these I put many different colored toys in the house, but the blonde skinny Barbie doll,
Yeah.
or the blonde skinny princess with the tight bun in her hair and the tight thighs that are inches apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a terrible perception.
Yeah. And when I was growing up, there was no choice. I mean, Barbie was
I
blonde
remember.
and only blonde.
Same with me.
I mean,
I
thank
think
goodness.
Skipper was brunette. She couldn't get to the salon yet. She was too young. But I remember having a Skipper with like brown hair, but most of them were blonde.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And the collector's items, they were blonde always.
Yeah. So to give a shout out to the Barbie movie, they really did have just a wonderful array of women and men in that movie to represent our diversities. But
Sort
Yeah.
of. Margot Robbie, beautiful blonde.
well, but I think
Who
that's
I
the point
adore,
of it.
by the way. I think
That's-
she's incredible.
That's the point of it. I think
Yeah.
that she was the iconic look.
Yeah,
and
she totally is.
One might say she fell from grace beautifully, and with knowledge, she realized that even she had flaws. Even she had imperfections.
Yeah.
And the question is, at the end, when she goes to her gynecologist, it's still
I
gonna
love that
it's still
scene.
gonna hurt her too. So I guess I was also thinking about this issue of tightness and tightening around exercise. And you and I both like to
Well, that's
be
why I said
active.
tight butt when we started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, talk about social media. There's so much out there on Instagram and Facebook about these different exercise routines. And it's playing into all of our interest, perhaps, or need or want to know what's going to work for us. What's going to give us that tight butt.
Well, and they all say tight. Tight
They do.
abs,
They do.
tight
That's
legs,
right.
tight butt.
That's true.
That is
That's
a
true.
word. How long will it take you to do wall Pilates in order for you to get a tight set of abs? Tight butt.
Whew.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
But we're so sort of programmed to accept it that I don't think we recognize how much of it there is until we have a conversation like this.
Again, if you have enough people projecting onto you year after year, day after day kind of thing, what you should be, what you should look like, how you're going to get there, i.e. if you do wall Pilates for 30 days, just for a small amount of $25.99, whatever it is. How come 99 cents is always a part of it? There must be
There
something
is a
about
science
that.
behind that. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I do remember someone in marketing explaining this to me.
I'm
that,
sure.
like $12.50.
Right.
It sort of tricks even though it's almost the next dollar, it tricks the brain to go, oh, it's not quite that expensive.
Right. It's so interesting. Anyway, I think that despite the amount of advertising on the social media platforms for fitness programs, the recent CDC assessment of how many people are actually active is only 28%.
Interesting.
Physically
So
fit.
they all want to go out and get, okay, interesting.
So I'm not saying, listen, I can, again, as a 62-year-old woman, if I'm exercising and I'm doing what I want to do and I get what I feel like is in shape, I still wiggle, trust me, in a lot of different places. But also if I take time off, I get a flu or I'm traveling and I can't travel. boy, do those changes.
The constellations show up at
Oh
night.
my gosh, the constellations are, just the whole horoscope right there. And I'm pretty fit and I'm slim because I'm all of maybe 5 feet, but it's whatever. I guess what I'm trying to say is that again and again and again, I want to point out that there's a certain amount of aging phenomenon that happens, that there's a certain amount of exercise that we can do, that yet still, as we age, things change very quickly back to where you might have been.
Right.
And that I'd like to suggest to our audience that the reason that you and I love to do exercise is, for me, it's about my mind. It really is more about my mind than my body.
Me too. That is, I'm so happy you said that, because I try to, when I have patients that are trying to pick up exercise for health and fitness versus, of course, aesthetics become a part of it, but I say choose something that is going to feel more like you're learning a new skill, or it's for your brain, it's for your mental health, and then let getting in shape be a byproduct. Because if you get obsessed with just looking good, you're never going to want to. That's so stressful.
It is.
It feels terrible. And talk about setting yourself up to fail and feel crappy. Because particularly as a woman, my weight, my body changes throughout the month. If I'm premenstrual, I could be between 5 and 8 pounds heavier than I am.
Absolutely.
So it's just constantly changing. And so focusing on something that's for like a skill or the mind or the spirit, and then fitness and looking good is a byproduct, is such a healthier approach.
It reminds me that this is what we're talking about, is kind of keeping it about ourself, not about what the spectator is saying about us, rather than being concerned, and as hard as this is, with what the world around us is saying, what is going to give me a sense of pleasure or empowerment or accomplishment, or help me feel less anxious, less depressed, just better in, my day to day.
Day to day.
And that's what I think exercise can do for so many people. And I'm not talking about spending 3 hours at the gym and lifting 800 pounds. I'm being a little obviously ridiculous with 800 pounds, but
embellishment is the key to a good story.
There you go. Thank you. It's about just keeping the body mobile and moving.
Yeah.
And there are different levels of fitness. Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. It's
and being self-motivated is unique and can be very challenging. Like you said, you and I, we have engines that rev and run on high until we decide to go to bed at night.
Yeah.
And so self-motivation comes a bit easier to us. That's why finding something that you really love and benefit from in different areas is essential.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess figuring out what your motivation is, right? What is your motivation to be tighter? What is your motivation to be more fit? What is your motivation around all of this is perhaps a basic question.
Yes, and it just reminded me that I saw an advertisement for a lunchtime cosmetic surgery Kegel machine to tighten your vagina, that you sit down and it has the muscles do 1,200 Kegels in a certain amount of time.
Yep.
Did you see that?
I haven't seen it. I actually saw a device at a OBGYN conference, which is that's
that
so
around?
interesting. It just struck me how, when I go to these national conferences, they could be about a lot of different topics, but they're general OBGYN conferences. It might be about sex, but it's often about all the other gynecological phenomenon. And more in the, there's always swag, and there's always people, the pharmaceutical companies are showing you products, but more and more there are products about appearance, products about kegling, products about tightening. There it is again.
There it
is again.
Tight.
Yeah.
tight.
And which, of course, just reeks of capitalism. Like, how do we sell more things, and how do we convince women that this is the way in which they are going to be, better? What is that illusion?
I don't know, but I don't think we're anywhere close to changing anything. As a matter of fact, I know that majority of investment goes into research for anti-aging, and that's all about being tight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we are just at the beginning of this phenomenon.
yeah. I mean, listen, it's not surprising that people seek a means to alter their appearance to conform to societal ideas of attractiveness. Everybody wants to be attractive. Everybody wants to kind of feel good about the way they look. I've rarely met a person who said, I don't really care about that stuff.
Oh no, vanity. And I joke. I don't joke. I'm serious. Vanity is my choice sin. I like. I like looking good. It feels good. Everybody enjoys a compliment, feeling like they're attractive. I get it. I just wish there was a broader spectrum of what could make people feel good versus trying to squeeze us all into a box.
Yeah.
A tight one.
Yeah, a very tight one. And, it's a slightly rhetorical comment that, women spend a lot more time, a lot more money, a lot more energy on thinking about how they appear than men have. Certainly historically, and I think certainly even now.
Matty, do you spend a lot of time thinking about how you look?
Sometimes.
Okay, fair enough. Had to ask a man while we've got one with us.
I think that's.
He's a feminist.
I think
so.
An N of 1 is a very reasonable scientific study. Yeah. So, do you have anything more you want to say about tightening, the male gaze, any of the things we've spoken about today? Oh, I want to just bring up one thing that I thought was very interesting from a historical point of view. So, when did corsets kind of go out of vogue? No, I'm not talking about the recent resurgence, if you will, in haute couture. I'm talking about the everyday wearing of corsets.
Let me try to guess.
Yes, please.
Was it as late as something close to the 70s when it was like the braless movement?
That was the braless movement, but it was actually during World Wars. That during the World Wars, World War One, they asked women to stop buying corsets to free up the metal.
The metal for
war production.
I love war associations because it's so fascinating. You learn a little bit of history.
They said that this recommendation liberated some 28,000 tons of metal, enough to build 2 battleships. And then
Holy smokes.
I know. And then in World War II, some of the same phenomenon occurred, but also when women were entering the workforce during World War II, they could not be wrapped up
drilling
in
planes together with
corsets
on.
Corsets on. So again, after World War II, Hollywood brought back the fashion to some degree, but it really did shift the universality of them.
I have a whole new perspective on Rosie the Riveter now when I think about that picture.
Oh, that's great. I like that too. I like that. So Allison and I like to end Vulva Views with a quote. And I just want to read 2 of them today, okay? So Brene Brown said that, quote, if we can share our story with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, shame can't survive. Sonia Renee Taylor, who wrote The Body is Not an Apology, says, quote, moving from body shame to radical self-love is a road of inquiry and insight. We will need to ask ourselves tough questions from a place of grace and grounding.
Very nice. Beautiful.
I like grace and grounding.
I love grace and grounding.
Yeah.
Very nice.
It steeps us in our deeper roots, not the superficiality that we've been kind of talking about today and the gaze that makes us all feel so much shame.
I just want to say, if you are taking care of yourself in the best way that you can, love yourself and love your body.
Yeah. And as moms, I want to remind everyone out there that, children don't arrive feeling ashamed of their race, their gender, their age, their differing abilities.
Right.
That let's think about, why does this have to change? Why does this have to change? Anything further you want to say today, Allison?
No, I think that's all. I think we have covered plenty. And, well, I guess if I were to go back to my astrological comparison, if someone does not like the dimples on your butt, you can tell them to kiss your Ursa Major.
You can do that to
That's
my
my-
Big Dipper buddy anytime.
That's my clinical perspective for the day.
That was my clinical perspective, too. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Amy Novad, MD, gynecologist.
I'm Allison Chawla, psychotherapist, alternative healer. And you are listening to Vulva Views.